All right, folks, let's spend a minute and talk about furnaces. I've had a problem with a gas furnace over the past month and a half and had three different HVAC technicians come out, three different companies, and nobody figured out what it was until the last one. And if I had listened to their advice, it would have cost thousands of dollars in repairs that weren't necessary. So I want to tell you my experience because it was rare. This isn't something everybody's going to experience, but I think it's something that some of you might be experiencing. And I know a video like this sure would have helped me and saved me even more money. So hopefully this will help you. So problem was the furnace was doing what's called short cycling, where the gas comes on, everything seems to work, and the flame even lights for a couple seconds tops. 2 or 3 seconds, usually less than that, and then it goes out, and it repeats this cycle every minute. Order of operations for the furnace is the inducer motor comes on first. This is a small motor, not the main fan, but it's a smaller fan that just gets air flowing in there so it can suction through the gas. Once that's been going for about 45 seconds, the pilot light, or in my case the hot surface igniter, comes on. This is just a piece of metal that starts to glow and gets hot, and it's used to light the gas instead of a pilot light from the old gas furnaces. This will glow for 10, almost 15 seconds, and then the gas valve will kick on the gas. Now, before this happens, really even before and during the process, there's a few safety checks. When the inducer motor starts, there's what's called a pressure limit switch that actually checks air pressure, so make sure that air is flowing through. If there isn't any air pressure going through, then that switch will fail and the hot surface igniter will never come on. Well, in my particular situation, the igniter came on, so I know we're good there. The next check, and this happens throughout the entire process, there's a few what they call limit switches, and these are more or less temperature sensors. They're not smart. It's just a piece of metal that it makes a switch, so electricity passes through it when everything is okay. When this piece of metal gets too hot, it literally pops out of place and it breaks the electrical current, so the electric current can no longer pass through that line, and the control board detects that and stops operations on the furnace. So in my particular case, I've got 5 of those limit switches. There's 2 on what they call the hamster wheel or squirrel wheel, the big fan blower for the house, one on the top, one on the bottom. There is one on the, I'm sorry, I said 5, I think it's actually 4. So yeah, there's those 2 on the blower. Then within the furnace compartment, there is one on the heat exchanger, which is kind of the guts, the internal guts on the furnace. You don't ever see it. It's where all the heat goes and hits the airflow to warm up the air going through the system. And then there is one on the actual right where the gas gets ignited, on the burners themselves. So this one you also hear referred to as a rollout switch. It's really there in case airflow doesn't happen and the flame comes out of that burner compartment and starts to go into places in the furnace that it shouldn't. That switch detects that heat from the flame and triggers the safety systems to cut everything off. All right, so of those 4 limit switches, 3 of them have a reset button on them. This is a tiny little prong. If you used old laptops that had that little stick mouse in the middle of the keyboard, it's about like that. And it's right in the middle of this little switch that's maybe the size of a dime or a nickel. Yeah, that's really what this switch looks like. About probably closer to a nickel with 2 prongs sticking up on either on one end, say the top side, and those 2 prongs are where the 2 electrical cables connect. And then in the middle is the what would be the reset switch. So on those ones that have the reset switch, if something, they happen to get triggered by a high temperature, you can go in there, press that little switch down, and it resets the metal disc and allows the current to go back through. On the other one, there is a reset button. This is the one on the heat exchanger. The idea there, I think, is that if you've got a problem there that triggers that safety switch, you need a professional to come in. It's not something you just want to reset and try again. And then another safety sensor is the flame sensor. So this is a steel rod that goes right in the fire in the burners, so that it can detect when there is actually a flame going through the system. The idea is if there's no flame, it doesn't want to keep pumping gas because that creates a huge safety issue, right? So if you go for a few seconds and there's no flame detected on that rod, then the system cuts off the gas. All the while on your control board, there's LED lights to indicate what's going on. So they've got one particular pattern. In the case of my furnace, which is a Maytag furnace actually made by a company called Nordyne, I got 3 LED lights, a green, a red, and a yellow for the flame. So green and red will light up in different combinations to indicate what the problem is. When the green and red lights are both on and they're solid, not flashing, that's normal operation. The yellow is the flame rod. So if the flame rod or flame sensor actually detects a flame, then that yellow light will be lit. No flame, then the yellow light's off. So again, the normal operation here, the inducer motor starts the airflow and make sure that's good. Then you get a couple seconds of the igniter, then you get a couple seconds of gas, and hopefully the gas lights. Flame rod detects the light, and then the gas is allowed to continue. After 30 seconds of going with just the inducer motor, then the big fan kicks on and starts to send airflow through the whole house. It waits 30 seconds so it can make sure that heat exchanger gets warmed up, and it's not going to push cold air out into your house. It's going to push as warm air as possible. All right, so that's the way things are supposed to work. In my situation, I was having a problem that they call short cycling, where everything would go through that proper cycle up to the point to where the flame would light. And then, as I was saying earlier, after 2 or 3 seconds, the flame would go out, usually less than 2 seconds. And then the system would repeat this cycle. And it took about a minute from start and end of the cycle, where the inducer motor is on the entire time. So you've got 45 seconds of just inducer, then 15 seconds of inducer and the hot surface igniter, and then 2 seconds of gas, and maybe a second or 2 of actual flame. Then the gas stops, flame goes out, and you're back at the start of the 45-second cycle before the igniter comes on and tries again. The most common problem that, if you Google short cycling, the most common reason that you'll see for it is a problem with that flame rod. So that little flame sensor I was discussing that is stuck in the fire, after a lot of use, it can start to get carbon buildup on it, and it doesn't function the way it's supposed to. Also, it's got some porcelain on the outside where the wire actually connects that runs to the control board. That can get cracked after a lot of usage. So there's a lot of ways that thing can go wrong. And it's the number one issue people have when this short cycle appears. Now, so if it's not doing its job, then it's not telling the system you have a flame when you actually do, and that would cause the gas to get cut out. Now, in normal practice, what's supposed to happen is after a few cycles like that where it doesn't detect a flame, the system goes into what's called a lockout, where it's an hour before it'll ever start that cycle again. And the LEDs, those green and red lights I was telling you about, they'll flash in a particular manner to tell you that there was a problem with the flame sensor. That wasn't happening for me. In my case, the LEDs showed normal operation. When there was a fire, the LED for the flame sensor was on. When there was no fire, the flame was off, so it appeared to be working correctly. Also, and I read mixed things on this, but they'll show you that it should give gas for like 8 to 10 seconds sometimes before actually cutting the cycle off, and for me I was only getting 2-3 seconds of gas tops. All right, so anyways, so the first thing I do is call the HVAC people to come out and take a look at the system. So they get out, and he's like, oh yeah, this is common, flame sensor. Goes up there, cleans the flame sensor. And he's like, I'm just going to charge you the trip fee, which for this company was $60 for what was 10 minutes of work for this guy. So after that, he left and everything was working. So, okay, great. Easy fix. He even gave me a picture of the flame sensor. It's the easiest thing in the world to get to. You know, if you know where your furnace is, there's a metal access cover. And in the case of this particular Maytag Nordyne furnace, there's one screw that holds the flame sensor in place. So super easy to take the thing out. And he's like, you know, if you have a problem, you can clean it. He said clean it by taking a knife and scraping the side. Everybody else in the world says don't do that. Use something like a fine sandpaper or emery cloth. Of course, I didn't read the other people's recommendations before going up there with a knife. You know, after it started breaking again a couple days later, I went up there and tried to clean it the way he said. That didn't work. So he told me before he left that, you know, if it acted up again, they may need to replace that sensor, and it's $250, $300 repair. Well, after telling me, you know, what to look for and where this thing was, I looked at it. I'm like, this is 5 minutes tops to get in there and pull this thing out. That's crazy that it's $300, even $250 to do this repair, to replace it. How expensive can this part be? So, go online, $5 part. No matter where you want to look. Amazon, eBay, HVAC wholesalers, it's a $5 part. So, why would I pay $250, $300 for him to replace a $5 part? All right, so I order it. Part comes in a couple days later. I put the new part in. Things are working. Okay. So I think I'm good until the next day when it starts breaking all over again. All right, now we had a problem because the particular symptoms I'm having, where the igniter does come on, the gas does flow for a second, the flame even lights for a second, the cause for all those symptoms, everybody says flame sensor, flame sensor, flame sensor. If anything else had been broken, you know, if the pressure switch had not been working, well, then the igniter never would have started in the first place. If any of the high limit switches had been tripped, the same thing. Igniters never would have started. And I tested this by just unplugging those switches. That basically simulates a failure like they had been tripped. And yeah, when they're not there, the control board detects it, the LEDs flash that there's a problem, the system completely kind of shuts down, really just the inducer motor flows. That's not what was happening for me. All right, so this first company that sent somebody out, the guy was a kid, early 20s, really did not seem to know anything. He was constantly on the phone with other people asking what to do. So let me call a different company because I don't want them. I don't want to see this kid anymore. So I call a different company to come back out. They check out the problem, and he's like, oh, well, you know what? I think it's this limit switch, because I hooked it up to my multimeter and the limit switch is bad. So he goes in there and he wants to replace the limit switch. And again, now I've started Googling common repairs, and same scenario, $10 part, $300 repair. And it's 2 screws, super easy to get to. So I'm like, let me think about it and call you back. The guy leaves. I pull the limit switch out. There's plenty of people on YouTube and on the internet that'll show you how to use a multimeter and check the limit switch. So I was able to do that. It passed. I didn't have any problem. So because the limit switch is all mechanical, you can also test its real functionality just by hooking up to a multimeter and doing what's called a continuity test, where it just passes a current through, and if the current passes through successfully, your multimeter makes a beep sound. And then you hold a lighter up against the flames, up against the limit switch, and it should trip. So you should hear a pop, and that breaks the electrical circuit. So on your multimeter, that current never flows through, and that beeping sound stops. So I did that, and guess what? Everything was working perfectly. Tripped it with the flame. It tripped the way it was supposed to. Reset it, and all good. But I'm looking at it. It does look a little discolored. It doesn't look quite like a new one would. So you know what? Let me replace it anyways. It's not going to hurt to put a new safety sensor in there. The part number is written on the sticker on the side of the switch. So again, Google it. $5-10 part on Amazon. Get it in. 2 screws, I think, for this one. 1 screw on either side, left, right side. Simple repair. And again, I'm running for another day or so, and then it's out. All right. Well, now this guy that I called out also seems to not know. Again, he was on the phone with other people. He diagnosed the wrong part, a part that I diagnosed right after him and was working. So, damn it, I want to get somebody in here who knows what they're doing. Call another different company to come back out. So I call the different company to come back out, and everything is working when they arrive. So not wanting to just charge me a trip fee for not doing anything, they do the whole HVAC tune-up that they recommend you do once or before the start of your heat and cool season. He's like, yeah, I checked all your safety sensors, checked your exhaust pipe, all the little things that might cause problems or get crap logged in them over the year. It's like, everything looks good. He's like, your furnace looks like it's brand new. And it kind of is in terms of furnaces. It's about 10 years old. But everything's good. So I'm like, awesome. So he leaves, and I don't have the problem for another week, and then it comes back. Damn it. So I call him to come back out. I'm like, you said this thing was good. It ain't working now. So with that call back out, they don't charge you another trip fee. So this time I'm sitting there shadowing him in the attic as he's looking over all this, because I'm starting to feel like an expert with as many things as I've read and videos as I've watched, and even like online normal HVAC licensing training presentations I found. Whatever. So I'm watching the guy, and he's like, well, all your safety sensors are good. It's got to be the gas valve. Could it be the control board? No, the control board, they don't really have problems. It's got to be the gas valve sticking, like, because it seems like it's cutting off the gas. I'm like, well, okay, yeah, I agree with that, but I mean, it works sometimes. You would think if a gas valve mechanical problem would be failed or good, not intermittent like that. But all right, so, but then he calls somebody, which worries me. Why do I keep getting people that don't know what I keep getting these kids in their 20s. So he calls somebody. He's like, oh, we'll clean the burner orifices. Sometimes if there's small debris in there, even something you can't see, it can impede the flow of gas and make the flame on the flame sensor just weak enough to where it trips the safety sensor and cuts the system off. Like, all right, I don't think that's it, but sure, you want to do that, whatever. So he cleans the flame sensor, puts the system back, cleans the burner orifices, puts the system back together. And he's like, all right, it's all good. Everything's working. It's like, so we're going to leave it like this. I'm not going to charge you anything for today since we just did that tune-up. And but if we have to come back out, we're going to replace the gas valve, and that's an expensive part. I didn't ask him, but I Googled it, and the part's $150, $160, and these services charge $700, $800, $900, $1,000 for it. Well, he hasn't really given me any evidence that the gas valve is the problem, and I'd feel really bad trying to pay that much money to replace something to find out that it didn't fix the issue. So whatever, I let him leave, and of course, a couple days later, it breaks again. This time I call a fourth company. Now keep in mind, at this point we've replaced the flame sensor, replaced one of the high limit switches on the heat exchanger. The other 3 limit switches have reset buttons, so I can physically tell that they are okay. I've also checked all the wiring. That's something else to tell you. You know, a loose wire connection can cause weird issues like this. So I've every connection I could, I've unplugged and plugged back in on the control board and other adapters within the furnace. Nothing's helped. So I stumble upon the paperwork from my furnace and I find the company that actually installed it. Call them to come out. And the guy pulls up. He's like, hey, I saw on the side of your house you've got a Maytag condenser for your air conditioner. Is your furnace Maytag too? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you know if it was made by Nordyne? I'm like, yeah. Because, you know, I figured that out looking through all the parts. He's like, yeah. Then I gave him a description of what the issue is. He's like, I know exactly what it is before even looking at it. He's like, your control board's bad. It's like we see this a lot with these Maytag Nordyne furnaces where it'll get into this short cycle, but the LEDs will show normal operation. You got to replace the control board. But does his due diligence, goes up there. I don't really know how you test for that, but I guess he looks at all the others. Yeah, he looked at all the other safety sensors and all the other mechanisms that could have caused an issue. It's like everything else I've tested is working. Your flame rod is good. Limit switches are good. Pressure switches are good. The inducer motor's working. The hot surface igniter's working. You've got airflow. Your vent's clean. The only thing left, and there's, as far as the gas valve, there's electrical current going to the gas valve the way it's supposed to. So the only thing left is the valve or the control board. He has, again, with his experience, like, not the valve. It's going to be the control board. I'm like, all right. I think that makes sense. This is the first time somebody said something to me that makes sense. And really, yeah, through process of elimination, there's not a whole lot left to replace. So, what am I looking at, dude, to replace the control board? Goes out to his van for 20 minutes and comes back. It's like, well, I called the manufacturer and got the part, and we have it in stock here in the warehouse. We can replace it today. It's going to be, what did he say, $886. Holy shit. This is not an iPhone strapped to the side of the furnace. This is a pretty small logic board, if you know anything about computers, with a lot of solid state parts, transistors, capacitors, some just manual wire connections. There's not expensive components on this thing. There's no CPU on it. The thinking part all happens by your thermostat, if you've got like a Nest or an Ecobee or whatever. So it's crazy to me. I'm like, man, they are really upcharging on the labor. And I'm like, let me think about it and I'll call you back. So he hands me the invoice, and on the invoice he writes down the part number. And he writes down that the part is $726. Well, you know me. I get on Google. I look up the manufacturer, Nordyne, the people that make the furnace. Get their customer service number, call them, give them my furnace's serial number, model number. I tell them I need a replacement control board. Can you tell me what the part number is? Because no, it's been 10 years, they're not using the same part number. So I give them the part number that I have now, they confirm that, and they tell me what the replacement part number is for it. So now on to Amazon, where I find the part for not $725, $26, whatever he wrote down, but for $75. $75, not $700. Maybe this place is selling me used garbage that I don't, right? It's Amazon, but sold by some other wholesaler. Let me look around a little bit more. Find it on eBay, $100. Find it on another wholesaler's website, $105. And these people are listing new condition, not used. So, all right. So my price, my $75 price, is in the ballpark of being realistic. Everything seems good. So I order the board. Now, you might be thinking, replacing the control board, man, that sounds scary. Let me tell you that none of the things that I've talked about today are scary. I am not a licensed or trained in HVAC repair at all whatsoever, other than the shit ton of reading I've done over the last couple weeks. I don't know anybody that's licensed or repaired other than the strangers that came out here to my house, and they don't seem to know any more than I do. So don't act on anything that I'm telling you unless you're willing to assume all risk and liability. Also, be aware that any kind of work that you do to your HVAC system can void the warranty completely. Or not warrant, well, yeah, void the warranty. Also, void your homeowner's insurance claim. So if you start an electrical fire, or worse, your house explodes in a gas explosion, your insurance likely won't pay for it if they find out you did these repairs yourself. That said, what I dealt with over the past month was all completely what I was comfortable with for DIY. Flame rod was one screw and one wire connected to it that just slides on, slides off as far as the wire connectors. The limit switch was two screws and two wires, positive, negative. Again, slide on, slide off little tabs. Super easy. So the control board is what you might think is scary, right? There's a lot of wires on that thing. There's maybe 3 plugs of a group of wires and 15 or 20 individual wires. It looks scary, but I didn't think it was. If you go in there, you get the correct replacement part. In my case, the replacement board, while it is a new part, it had identical connections to the old one. So what I did is one wire at a time. I'm holding the new board in there, and I remove one wire from the old board, and I plug it into the exact same place on the new board. Also, these boards have writing on it, so they kind of tell you what each plug is for in short terminology. You're not really going to understand it, but you can see like, oh, it says W2 here, it says W2 there. This should be the same thing. Make sure you're good. So anyways, one by one, I move all the wires over. Once I've got all the wires disconnected from the old one, then it's 2 screws on the top of the furnace cage to take that old board out. It's on a little metal bracket that kind of just pops out of. It's using some plastic clips to hold itself on. So pop that thing off. The new board had those plastic clips already on it, so it popped right in. Again, 2 screws to mount it back in there. The whole task took 15 minutes, and the hardest part was just being in the attic. You know, you're likely not in a comfortable position the way you have to sit, stand, or kneel to get to your furnace, especially if it's in your attic like mine is. And because you're leaving the old one mounted in there, it's kind of tucked in the back, so you do have to kind of work back in there a little bit amongst this whole bunch of wires. But not hard. Not anything I felt like I was unsure of getting in there. So, anyways, get the new board replaced, turn the power back on. By the way, anytime you're doing any of these repairs, turn the power off to your unit. Turn the power back on, and I watch. LEDs come on normal. Inducer motor comes on. 45 seconds later, hot surface igniter starts. 15 seconds later, gas kicks in. 2 seconds later, gas cuts off. This time I didn't get a flame. All right, well, that's a little scary. Let's let it try again. All right, it just cycles over. Still no error codes from the LED. Everything's showing normal. That repeats the cycle. Still no flame. It feels like it's cutting the gas off too soon before it has a chance to light. Well, it made 3 attempts that failed, and then on the 4th attempt, the flame lit, and it stayed lit. This is the first time in a cold week that I have had heat in the house, and it was wonderful. That was roughly 24 hours ago. And for the past 24 hours, the system has operated flawlessly. It has turned off when it's supposed to. It's turned on when it's supposed to. It has ignited on the first try. I think this is just a guess. I think it failed the first 3 attempts igniting because I had the access panel off and there was a draft coming through that was maybe disturbing the gas flow. Now that I've got the access panel closed and that thing's sealed up, there's no airflow going through there that's not the design airflow. So it seems to not have any problem lighting. Anyways, $75 for the part versus the $725 they wanted to charge me for the part, plus another $200 for labor for what amounted to 15 minutes. I get the labor charge, right? These HVAC people, they got to pay for their office operations, their vans, the variety of tools, licensure. I'm sure they're insured and bonded should they screw something up and blow up your house. So they've got a lot of overhead, and they deserve to make a living too and make a profit. So I don't mind $200 in labor for 15 minutes. Really, I can handle that. But don't rate me on the price of a part like that. $150, maybe $200 I would have been willing to pay for that $75 part, but not $726. Screw you, buddy. Anyway, I'm probably jinxing it now by making this video, but I struggled, like I said, for it's probably 6 weeks now with this, go on and off. And everything I read on the internet, I was on discussion message boards with HVAC technicians, and they all say what I already read. Oh, check your limit switches, check your pressure switches, check your flame sensor. Nobody once said control board until that guy showed up at my door and recognized the Maytag system and had a history with them. So hopefully somebody else is watching this that's having the same problem. If you've got a Maytag made by Nordyne, know that control board might very well be your issue if you've already replaced the flame sensor. I wouldn't even waste time. If your control board is showing normal operation, I wouldn't even waste time with the limit switches or the pressure switches. Say, do check your flame sensor first. Clean it, replace it, what have you. If you're still good after that, I'd probably go straight to the control board. And knowing what I know now, and if you're dealing with that particular furnace model. All right, that's it for my long talk. I hope this is beneficial to somebody. And that's it. All right, I'm not an HVAC guy. You're not going to get more videos like this from me. Just this one, trying to put some positive energy out into the universe. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.